This is the Classical Post podcast, exploring the intersection of classical music, style, and wellness. We dive into meaningful conversations with leading artists from an array of different backgrounds. Based in New York City, Classical Post is a touchpoint for tastemakers. I'm Jonathan Eifert. Let's get into it. The Gateways Music Festival Orchestra makes its Carnegie Hall debut this month, led by Anthony Parnther. The concert features Jon Batiste, who just won 5 Grammys at this year's ceremony, including the highly coveted title, Album of the Year. The debut of this orchestra at Carnegie is important because it spotlights the work of the Gateways Music Festival, which celebrates the contributions of classical musicians of African descent, bringing together professionals from leading orchestras across the country to perform and inspire communities through the power of music. I had the pleasure of speaking with Anthony ahead of this major New York appearance. He's conducted artists spanning every musical genre, from Kanye West to Joshua Bell. It's particularly profound what he said near the end of our chat about what he hopes people take away after listening to this concert. He specifically wants to debunk the myth that there is a lack of Black talent in the classical space. Quite the contrary, there is plenty of talent. So stay tuned later in the episode for this discussion. Where do you find inspiration to create music and something that is outside the music field, but that influences your music making?
I find so many different points of inspiration when it comes to music making, because I feel oftentimes, especially with the best music that we have available to us, that sometimes current events, past events, tragedy, something that's funny or humorous that happened, all of these things, a lot of what we perform in really good music is a reflection of everyday life. So sometimes I can find that inspiration on my way to Gelson's up to the grocery store. You never know. Inspiration is not something you expect. It's just something that uh, can be quite happenstance.
If you think about other fields outside of music, like art, design, architecture, and fashion, those kind of 4 buckets, do any of those particular things or fields of study influence your music making?
Without question. Uh, Absolutely without question. I remember I was looking at there was an exhibition of Picasso paintings that were at the Norton Simon Museum not too long. Actually, now that I think about it, it was quite a bit ago. But but each of these works were so distinct that I thought, man, I think each of these could definitely have their own soundtrack in a way. But absolutely, I think that music can be influenced by anything. Really, that's so subjective. It's up to whomever is making the music.
I'm just always curious about the artist specifically, if they can point to, even when you talk about art, if there's even like a certain movement in, the art history that particularly moves you or inspires you.
Um, I can't think of any particular because I think my taste is pretty widespread. But I mean, you can point to many instances in classical music. You look at like Sergei Rachmaninoff; he has a piece called "Isle of the Dead," which is based off of a painting. Then you look at Beethoven's Sixth Symphony, which is just based off of his experiences in nature. So yeah, it's really easy to derive inspiration from anything that you find particularly interesting, I think.
Describe a routine you have in place that helps you live a healthier life.
Uh, one of the things that's been very helpful for me, especially over the probably the last couple of election cycles and sort of like getting through this pandemic has been disengaging from social media and getting out into nature a lot more. I think that has been sort of tantamount. It's been really important to me keeping as positive an outlook on the current state of affairs as possible.
It's a good point. And in terms of energy specifically, can you point to something in life that keeps you going, to keep creating? Anything particular come to mind?
You know, I'm not sure if I can think of any one particular source of energy that keeps me going. I think that I just have so many interesting and exciting projects ahead, each of them so different from each other, that just the interest in the project itself sort of keeps me, abuzz and awake at night. Currently I'm studying all the scores for, the Gateways Festival orchestra appearance at Carnegie Hall. So, a lot of this has been leading me down all of these different wormholes, concerning Brahms and Florence Price and George Walker. And George Walker is actually a composer that I knew for 25 years. So maybe not so much as with him, but when that project is over, then the next thing that I'll be concentrating on is Anthony Davis's Central Park Five, because I'll be working with him on that.
Oh, cool.
So each project itself generates a lot of energy and interest itself, and I think just it just begins there with the project itself.
What is one specific product you highly recommend?
Okay, so I am very obsessed currently. I love to cook, and I have a new set of. Okay, so the home that I'm living in now does not have a gas stove. It has an electronic. It has an electric stove. And so I was doing research on what are the best pans, for such a stove. And I purchased a set of hex clad pans, which came highly recommended from a number of my friends who are like professional chefs and doing a lot of reading. So I am having a ball cooking with my hex clad pans right
That's great. I love that. You're right, because when you switch between gas and electric, it's like a whole different ballgame, and you do
now.
have to find like better or different ones that stick, I guess, to the electric flat surface.
Exactly, and distribute heat
Yeah.
in certain ways, so I'm so pleased with them.
Hey everyone, just a quick moment to pause this interview to recommend a product I've been using for the past couple of years and really love. And that is CBD oil from the Colorado based company Ned. Their CBD has been really helpful to make me feel relaxed and get me in that de stress zone, especially during the pandemic. It's a practice I want to keep doing daily, even as we all get back to normal. I use their daily blend oil and have a monthly subscription, so it's easy to be consistent. As a listener of the Classical Post podcast, you receive 15% off, either a subscription like me or just a one time purchase. Use the code Classical Post at checkout by tapping the link in this podcast show notes, or head to helloned.com. What restaurant or bar do you love to eat at when you're in New York City? And then obviously, what do you order there?
I have not been to New York City, I hate to say, in about 20 years.
Oh my God.
I lived in New York, off and on between 1983 and 1994. But the last time that I was actually seriously in the city would have been driving through in 2005, but spending any significant amount of time would have been the early 2000s. Um, so I honestly do not have a really good answer for that. I can't remember the name of the place, but I think it's closed down. Actually, that's not exactly true. I was there in 2007. And a place that I did remember enjoying was Tavern on the Green, which was which was in Central Park. But I remember there was a little bit of controversy because they were serving Chilean sea bass, but it was, I think the Chilean sea bass population was a little endangered, so I remember ordering the chicken instead. So yeah, so
That's
that's the last restaurant experience that I can recall was Tavern on the Green in 2007 when I went to see Wicked. So, yes,
got it.
just
But
remember
you know what? You have a lot to look forward to then, because if you're in the city for this residency with Gateways, you can explore more restaurants this time around.
that's true. I will have to get a list going.
Founded in 1993, the Gateways Music Festival Orchestra celebrates the contributions of classical musicians of African descent, bringing together professionals from leading orchestras across the country to perform and inspire communities through the power of music. The Gateways Orchestra makes its Carnegie Hall debut, led by yourself, with a program that includes the world premiere of Jon Batiste's I Can. And many of you will know that John just won 5 Grammys at this year's ceremony, including the big Album of the Year. So, Anthony, tell us about the Gateways Music Festival and the big Carnegie Hall debut this month.
Well, the Gateways Festival Orchestra is an organization that I have admired for at least 20 years. I became aware of it even the late 90s or early 2000s when I heard that there was a festival orchestra. There's so many festival orchestras, with Grand Tetons, there's Tanglewood, there's Aspen. But that there was this a festival orchestra um, where the musicians were black. And that is significant, because I'm speaking only for myself, but I can assume that considering that African Americans are severely underrepresented in classical music as a whole, that for most of these musicians who are playing in professional orchestras around the country and abroad, they are either the only or one of the only persons of color in those rooms in which they are performing. So, the immediate thing that comes to mind is that, the Gateways Festival Orchestra is a bit of a family reunion for everybody because, quite frankly, the network of Black classical musicians is very small. Most of us know who everybody else is. And it's a bit of a family reunion, but it's also a safe space for all these musicians to come together and make music at an extraordinary high quality. And it's just a celebration, I think, of a number of things. A celebration of the perseverance of these musicians to have made it as far as they have in such a competitive and at times isolating and unfriendly industry. And it's a celebration that we get to perform music by musicians of our own community, like Florence Price and George Walker and Jon Batiste and things along those lines. So there's just so much to celebrate when we have 100 musicians from all over the country and beyond getting together for a week of festivities, really.
It's very exciting. And do you want to tell our listeners about this whole residency idea that culminates in the Carnegie Hall debut?
So the festival will start at the in Rochester, New York, up at the Eastman School of Music, and there'll be a number of recitals and performances throughout the week-long residency, culminating in the large-scale festival orchestra concert at the end of the week. And then after we've had that performance, then the entire orchestra will go from Rochester, New York, down to Manhattan to prepare for the premiere with Jon Batiste. So we'll meet up with Jon Batiste. We'll have a day or two of rehearsal, and then we're performing our full program at Carnegie Hall, which will be the last concert at the end of this week-long culmination of rehearsals and concerts and recitals and things along those lines.
Well, I'm planning on attending the Carnegie Hall concert, so very much looking forward to that. Do you want to just speak to what you hope the audience takes away after attending this concert? Is there one thing in particular that you would like to impart, as they say, depart after listening to the concert?
Well, first and foremost, I want the audience to enjoy the performance. I mean, we're musicians and we're there to perform. And, as artists, our job is to create beauty and share it. So that's the primary agenda. But I do hope that there are some myths, that some myths will be destroyed. And some of those are that there is a lack of qualified Black talent as far as classical musicians are concerned. Well, the 100 musicians that you see on stage are just a smattering of the database that the Gateways Festival Orchestra has. It just happens to be that this is the 100 that we're going to use for this particular concert. But that there is not a lack of talent or available qualified and highly energized and focused Black musicians who are ready to work. So I think that's one of the things that we'd like for people to leave the concert realizing that, even though the numbers would show that we're underrepresented in the industry, but the lack of talent or available musicians, that's a myth. So one of many things. Yeah, sure.
Last question for you. In terms of success, I know it's a very personal thing for everyone. Um, what does it mean to you?
Success. Um, well, I think success is best when shared. If your success uh, is not only like I've heard from somebody that success is a lonely vigil. It's a one person journey, but I think the best kind of success is when you can share that with others, especially when you can share with others who may not have the same resources as you. I think that's true success. So success to me would be leaving this industry behind in better shape than when I found it. I think that would be a high mark of success for me at the end of my career.
Thanks for listening to the Classical Post podcast. Explore more insightful content on our website at classicalpost.com, where we share original perspectives, listening guides to new recordings, and conversations with the leading artists. Stay abreast of classical music, style, and wellness by signing up for our monthly briefing, delivered directly to your inbox. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Until next time, I'm Jonathan Eifert. Thanks for listening.